Hi, my name is Erin Wiggins, and I'm very excited to share my recovery story for the Oasis Project 30 and 30. There is an incredible series of recovery questions that I am honored to share. So let's get started. First question is, what happened, why, and how did I enter into recovery? So let's start with what happened. I'm going to start with describing the state of my life when my addiction first began. I was 31 years old. I was a mom, a new mom. I had a 3.5-year-old son who was newly diagnosed with developmental disabilities. They thought he was possibly autistic. I had a new baby. He was about 1 at that time. I was married, and my marriage was extremely unhealthy. I was in an emotionally abusive marriage and sometimes physically abusive marriage. I was merely existing and barely existing at that time. I had a series of unhealthy friendships. The relationships with my family, particularly my mother, was extremely unhealthy. I suffered from depression. I was suffering from postpartum anxiety and depression at that time and didn't even know it. I had incredibly low self-esteem, and I'm even going to go into saying I had self-hatred. I was living a life of shame. I had victim thinking. I blamed everybody else for all of my problems, for the state of my life. I had an incredible amount of unprocessed trauma. I did not know how to manage my emotions. I did not know how to feel through my emotions. I did not even know how to identify what I was feeling. I was so disconnected from my body and from how I felt. Disassociating was my coping mechanism at that point. I had self-sabotage behaviors. I had horrific negative thoughts. I mean, I was the most abusive to my own self. Physically, I was very unhealthy. I have really bad shoulders. I've had multiple surgeries. I've had over hundreds of dislocations. I have really loose tendons and joints. I had epilepsy as a young child, and I had my first dislocation like in my late teens. And after that, they just started dislocating continuously, even with the slightest movements. And then I had some other physical traumas that had happened that sped up that process. So at 31, mentally, I was not okay. Emotionally, I was a wreck. I hated who I was, hated my life. I was a stranger to my own life. I did not have purpose. I did not want to wake up in the morning. I was merely just going through the motions, just trying to make it through every single day. If I could be anyone or anywhere other than me, I would have chosen it. I didn't even like my name. I even wanted to change my name at one point. That's how far away from myself I wanted to be. At 31, I walked into my doctor's office with the shoulder pain. I needed surgery. At that time, my husband wouldn't support me having surgery because it meant he would have to take care of the kids, and he was not up for that. So the next option was to prescribe me medication for my pain. The minute that I took that first pill, I was in love. And I think we don't talk about enough that the substance that we choose serves a purpose. Substance use is a coping mechanism. So what that pill did for me was completely numb out all the things that I just said. For the first time in 31 years, I didn't have to feel anything. And I'm an empath, so I feel deeply. So I was feeling all of these things, and the realization was so painful for me that I was contemplating, like, not even wanting to live anymore. I take this pill and all of a sudden I get relief. I actually feel happiness for the first time. I felt like super mom, all the things that I couldn't do before because physically I was in so much pain. Now I can do them. I was buzzing around the house, picking up the house, doing all the laundry. I mean, it was like a miracle to me. I didn't want to ever be without this medication ever again. Pain medication became my lover. It became my best friend. It became my confidant. It was there for me when nothing and nobody else was. That's a toxic relationship in itself. So one pill obviously started going to 2 pills, 2 pills went to 3 pills, 4 pills went to 5 pills. I was on hydrocodone, oxycodone, Xanax. At the height of my pain pill addiction, I was taking over 300 pills a month. I was being prescribed, and I was blowing through that in a week. Easy. It was really severe. Just because your tolerance rises so high. As you take more, your tolerance builds, and then you have to take more to get the same effect. So to achieve that numbness and that false safety that I did for the first pill, I was taking up to 20, 25 at a time. And what that meant was my physical health was horrific. I would throw up like on the drop of a dime because I was ingesting so many pills that it was just destroying my stomach. I couldn't really eat anything. My bowels were horrific. I mean, I was sick. I look back on pictures now and I look like a skeleton. Like I'm a pretty thin woman in general. And looking back in those pictures, I looked anorexic. I looked so unhealthy. So my pain pill addiction went on for probably 3 years, almost 4 years, until I had my first surgery. And then all of a sudden I was ripped off my pain medication. Obviously doctors didn't realize that I had an addiction. The disease is very manipulative. It's cunning. It's baffling. I even got pain pill prescriptions from 2 different doctors at one time before the iStop came out. It was pretty bad. Of course, I ended up running out of my prescriptions early. So that meant I was buying them on the street and being exposed to other ways of obtaining opioids, which eventually led me to heroin. I ended up getting a divorce about 3 years into my addiction, which more unprocessed trauma. My mother was sick with cancer. I was taking care of her, so it was more stress. And with that went up my need to self-medicate. I wasn't able to manage any of those things. I wasn't in therapy. I didn't know how to take care of myself. I didn't know how to eat right. I didn't know how to, go to sleep when I needed to go to sleep. I was a wreck. Also, after the divorce, I decided to get myself in another horrible relationship because I wasn't working on anything. I started using heroin intravenously right off the bat. And that took me to some really, really, really dark places. In 2016, I got my first misdemeanor possession charge, and that led me to Oneida County Treatment Court. I had no intention of getting better. I had no intention of stopping. If anything, my addiction got even deeper and darker. because the reality of where I was at and now like the consequences were really showing up in my life, those negative consequences. I wasn't working. I now have a possession charge that I don't want to go to jail. So I said yes. Needless to say, I struggled the first couple months. So that's my how did I get into recovery? Oneida County Treatment Court. I struggled immensely the first couple months. I didn't stop using. I played the system until I couldn't play it anymore. I had 3 positive screens within my first 2 months there, and found myself newly pregnant and being shipped off to inpatient treatment. And that is the beginning of my real recovery, is when I went to McPike for my first inpatient treatment experience. And that was the first time I ever felt a glimpse of hope. That was my first interaction with, oh my gosh, maybe there's something different. Maybe my life can possibly be what I want it to be. My son is now 4. He's my recovery baby. I carried such shame and guilt over how I was with my other 2 sons, how I showed up as their mother. I just did some journal work the other day. Each one of my children had a different mom. My oldest son experienced abstinent mom, not a healed, healthy mom, but abstinent mom, and then addicted mom. My middle son, all he knew was addicted mom. And then lastly, my third son, he's had recovery mom. So there's been 3 different versions of me that my children have experienced. And that's kind of a hard pill to swallow, no pun intended. So yeah, Oneida County Treatment Court is where my recovery began. It's how I got into recovery. The first year was really tough. I had Bram and immediately felt the same depression and anxiety creep in that I did with my middle son. And I didn't know how to talk about it yet. I was still learning about, what these feelings were. And I didn't know how to reach out yet. So I had my first really big relapse. I went back to using heroin when he was a month old, and I went pretty hard for a couple months until God stepped in and said, I'm saving you before you're not savable. I had a pretty horrific experience with stimulants and mixing the 2. And it was like out of mind, out of body. I turned myself in, and I remember calling the authorities on myself. But I was faced with a decision in that moment of either you're all in or you're all out. Either you do whatever it takes to gain a life in recovery, or you don't, and you leave everybody behind and you leave them alone and you let them move on with their lives. And I'm so happy and grateful that I chose the second, because I have like a life beyond my wildest dreams at this time. And I often think back to that person and who I was at that moment. And I thank her all the time for her strength and for her determination and for believing in herself that she could do it. And since then, I have been on this incredible journey of recovery that I get to continue to share with you. I have multiple pathways in my recovery. I am on MAT, Save My Life. So I get to share that with you in the upcoming videos. Spirituality is my other pathway. My pathways shift as my needs shift. I have an incredible group of supports and friends, and I have a career that I just adore. So yeah, life is pretty amazing. Tough at times, but it's pretty amazing. So thank you for listening, and I will see you in video 2.